Hi everyone, it's Lindy on from Pink Whisper Designs. Today I thought it would be fun to create a mixed media mini clipboard. We're going to be using tons of products from the Tim Hotz collection, and we're also going to be using that brand new stamp set, the Curiosity Shop. So let's go ahead and get started. So here is that brand new set from Stampers Anonymous along with Tim Hotz, and look at this. This is absolutely adorable. We've got this vintage typewriter. We've got these little light bulbs, some sentiments, that little paper you can have going in and out of your typewriter, a couple of top hats, those little pointing fingers, a 4-leaf clover, and then those gigantic numbers, which I just love. I've got my detail scissors. I went ahead and stamped these, and I'm going to cut those out. And for stamping, I used some Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock and my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Now here's one of these little mini clipboards. And I'm just going to remove some of the hardware. I've just got a Phillips head screwdriver, and I'm going to take those off. You want to keep those in a safe place while you're working on your project. So now let's grab some craft stock from Tim Hotz Idea-ology, and this is the warm collection. I'm just going to grab one of these. This one kind of like a burnt orange, but any of these would be absolutely perfect for this project. And the back side, or the core of this cardstock, is a craft color. So when we do some sanding a bit later on, that's going to bring through that nice craft color cardstock. So let's go ahead and trace this. I've selected one of those pieces of paper, and I'm just using a pencil to trace that out. Then I'll grab my Tim Hotz titanium shears, and we can cut this down to size. Now I want to just put those little holes in this before I attach this to my clipboard, and I'm going to use my 1/4-inch hole punch and just punch those out. And I do want to say up front, this video is just a little bit longer than my usual videos, but I had so much I wanted to show you, and I did want to show you all the details, so you can create this for yourself if you want to. I'll be applying the Distress Collage Medium using my collage brush, both from Tim Hotz, and I'm just going to get a nice thin layer of that on both sides. I'm going to put it on the back side of the cardstock, and then I'm going to put it on the front side of our clipboard. So we'll have plenty of glue. I want to make sure this is nice and secure before we get started. So again, I'm just brushing on a nice thin coat of this. You do want to make sure after you're done with your brush that you wash it really well, rinse it really well in some water, and just make sure that you do that, otherwise you will ruin your brush. So I went ahead, I took that to the sink, and I got it nice and clean. So now I also want to use this stamp set. This has these little typewriter keys on it, and this is also from Stampers Anonymous and Tim Hotz, and this is called Documented. And I'm not even going to put that on an acrylic block or in my MISTI. I'm just going to ink that up, and we're just going to randomly stamp this around the background. And I'm going to do some 2nd and 3rd generation stamping just to make sure I have some light and dark areas. And you don't have to be perfect when you're doing this. Just go ahead and fill in the background. Now a lot of this will get covered, so you want to make sure you have plenty of it stamped so that some of it will show through in the end. I've got these Distress sanding discs from Tim Hotz, and you get 10 in a pack, and I've placed it on my foam applicator tool, and I'm just going to rough up the edges, and this will also make sure that there's no excess paper hanging over the sides. And then this is my favorite part. I'm just going to use it to scrape along this cardstock and reveal some of that craft stock underneath. And that really gives us a nice vintage look. So now I've got the 3D texture fades from Sizzix and Tim Hotz. This one is called a Typewriter. So let's run this through with some silver metallic cardstock, again from Tim Hotz Idea-ology. And I'm going to place this in my Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine. And what I like to do is grab the platform, a couple of pieces of cardboard. You could stack up some cardstock as well, whatever you prefer, and then I run it through nice and slow. Now, if it's too tight when you're running it through, just back it out and take off a piece of cardboard or cardstock. You don't want it to be too tight as you're running it through. You don't want to damage your machine. So now I've got that VersaFine Onyx Black ink and a foam applicator tool, and I'm going to hit the high spots on this embossed area. And look at these typewriter letters. These are just absolutely beautiful. So I will heat set that quickly. I am using that permanent ink because I do want this ink to dry onto this metallic paper. So I am using a permanent ink. I'm going to tear off a section for the top, and I like to tear in 2 different directions so I get that pretty ruffled edge. I'll go back to that foam applicator tool and add a little bit more of that black ink around the edges. For tape, I'm just going to use a double-sided 1/4 inch tape. You can use whatever you prefer here. I'm going to just load that up with some tape, and we'll remove that backing. I'm using my Cricut weeding tool to remove that backing. I just like to press the backing down and then use that little pick tool to remove the backing. So let's place this in the upper right-hand corner. I'm just going to use a paper towel because that ink wasn't quite dry yet, felt a little bit sticky. So I'm going to press that down, and then I'll go back to those titanium shears to take off any excess. And then I'll add some ink around those edges just to finish that off. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom left-hand corner. And then I'm adding a little extra ink onto that kind of burnt orange paper just to frame this entire piece. I've got the quote chips. These are called Theories, and you get a ton of quote chips in here, and I love quote chips. They're one of my favorite things to use. I grabbed 2 of these. One says, "Own your dreams," and the other one says, "When nothing is sure, everything is possible," and I just love that. I am creating this as a little graduation gift, and so I thought this was perfect with the typewriter and the 2 sentiments. So I inked up around the edges of those. Now I've got this ephemera pack called Keepsakes, and you get tons of ephemera in here. I'm just going to kind of sort through and grab a few things that I think might work. At this point, I wasn't 100% sure, so I just grabbed a handful of these. And then we're also going to grab one of these gauge dials, again from the Idea-ology collection. And I'm going to grab that one that's a little compass. I thought that would be perfect for this. Kind of like finding your way after graduation. So it does have all these really cute gauges though, so any of these would work just fine. And then from this set, I did grab these butterflies, but I'm just going to use one of them, and I'll use my detail scissors to cut that out. I've got the Distress Oxide Gather Twigs ink. This is one of my favorite ones to do some vintage inking on my mixed media projects. And I'm just going to go around the edges of all of these just to finish those off. Now do keep in mind that all of the products I'm using today are listed and linked down below and also on my blog. And if some of these products aren't currently available, I'll list a few options for you down below, something similar to what I've used today. So now you can see for this one, I tore a little notch out of there, and I'm using my tweezers to kind of roll that paper back, give it more of an aged look, and we'll add some more ink to this. I did want to bring in some black soot ink as well, so I'm adding that around the edges. And then let's go and do that again for the rest of these little pieces. This one I'm going to cut down. I like that little section of it says public schools, so I thought this was perfect. I will be cutting it down a little bit more later on, but for right now, I'm going to just take that sanding disc and rough up those edges just a little bit with that sanding disc. And it also removes a little bit of the ink, so it gives it a really rustic look. For the typewriter, I'll use the gathered twigs and the black soot. I'm just, again, going over the top. I'll kind of leave the center a little bit on the lighter side. And then I'll do that black right on the edges. We just don't want any of that white cardstock showing. So we have our little stack of ephemera. Oh, and then I did decide to do this little light bulb. I thought, kind of like a good idea. So it kind of goes along with my graduation theme. And I ink that up with the gathered twigs and the black soot. And then I'll ink up this little pointing finger with the gathered twigs. I did cut out 2 of those fingers, but I decided just to use this one. And then here's another little piece of ephemera I grabbed. It's a little circle. It looks like a little seal. I inked that up, and then another one of those little tags. So just have fun going through all your ephemera. I'm sure you, like me, you've collected tons of it over the years. So just kind of have fun picking out the pieces that go with your project the best. I've got some Tim Hotz black soot, black paint. And if this isn't available, I will list below for you another Ranger black paint that can be used as well. And we'll also be using the Picket Fence white ink, and I will list one of those that's very similar as well. So what I'm doing here is I'm not completely painting this. I'm just sort of dabbing that paint on. Add a few little dabs of it onto these screws. And then I'm going to use a paper towel and again, just try to remove some of that ink. So once that was all set, I can set this aside to dry. And then I'm going to use that same black ink to go around this metallic paper just a little bit and around this entire clipboard. I'm kind of darkening up the corners and I'm adding some here in between these letters. And then what I'll do again is just brush off a little bit of that with a paper towel. So for now I'm just kind of dry brushing almost. I'm trying to remove some of the ink so that I don't get too much, and then just spreading that on. And then again go back to that paper towel and just remove any excess that you don't want to be there. Now I'll use that same black ink and go around the edges of this. You could certainly just use your foam applicator tool and some black ink. But I'm just going to paint that black all the way around the edges. And then I did paint the back of my clipboard as well because that I wanted that to look finished off, and I may just be adding a little sentiment back there later on. So I've got that black ink with a little bit of water, and I'm going to spatter it with a small number 0 paintbrush just so I get some smaller spatters. But then you see here I did decide to kind of pick up more ink and get some larger spatters as well. I'll let that dry, and here's that Picket Fence white paint, and I'm going to start dabbing that on. I was a little bit more sparing with the white paint. I wanted to highlight those corners a little bit better. And again, I'm just sort of dabbing that on. I'm not really painting it on. And mostly with a dry brush. And now let's go ahead and spatter this color as well. And I'll add a little bit of water to that with my distress sprayer, and then we'll go ahead and spatter that. For this one, I'm going to place that ink right onto an acrylic block, and then I'm just going to flick that down onto the cardstock. It's going to give me a little bit different look. Now once that's done, make sure you do clean off your brush and your craft mat. And I guess I did decide that I needed a few more larger splatters, so I came in and splattered this a little bit more. Let's again set that aside to dry. We'll just punch those holes through this metallic cardstock. I'm just using my craft pick tool and just trying to find the center of those openings, and then I could just spread that apart a little bit using that tool. I'm just kind of using that tool in a circular motion just to open up those holes a little bit so that we can place this clip right back onto our clipboard. So I went ahead and did that, and now I'm going back to that white ink, and again just kind of dry brushing a little bit of that white onto this clip. Just thought it needed to kind of bring everything together a little bit better. So now I've got a Signal gel pen. This is the silver. I'm going to add a little bit of sparkle to this, just highlighting a few different areas on this typewriter. So I'll just quickly do that. You could certainly stamp this onto some metallic cardstock and then cut out these details, but I thought it'd just be easier and quicker to do it this way. Now I do want to create that little slit at the top of my typewriter. So I've got my magnetic cutting mat from We Are Makers, and I'm just going to use my cutting blade and cut a slit right at the top. And then that piece of ephemera that we worked on earlier is going to slide right into that opening. I'll add a little bit of Nuvo Deluxe adhesive right along the back and attach this to the typewriter. Now let's grab the two quote chips. One will go down here at the bottom and our typewriter will sit on that. I've got some E6000 glue. This is a really nice secure glue. I'm going to put plenty of it on the back and then we'll glue this in place. And off camera I did clamp that down for a little bit just to hold that in place and make sure it didn't slide around too much. And now I've got some double-sided foam tape and we're going to pop up the typewriter. Put a little tiny piece at the end of that little handle just to be sure that it doesn't get torn. It's pretty delicate there, so I added a little piece of foam tape. Now we've got some of our ephemera, so let's go ahead and start adding this to our clipboard. I'm going to curl the edges of this up just a little bit, just for, again, a more of a vintage look. And then I've got that other little piece of chipboard. I'm going to cut that down just a little bit. So I'm using my Tim Hotz titanium shears and we can cut that away. You can also use your cutting mat and your X-Acto knife to do the same thing. But those scissors really cut through this easily, so I decided to use those. So you can see that'll slide off to the left-hand side. Again, I'm going back to that E6000 glue. We'll position that down. And then I want to grab that little pointing finger and I'm going to just curl up the fingertip just a little bit and add some glue to the back of this, and then we'll position this right below the sentiment. Let's go ahead and cut away any of that excess. And now we can continue laying out some of the ephemera. I won't tape down the typewriter yet. I want to tuck a few things in behind there first. So I'm just going to position it down for now, and I won't remove the backing until I get this layout complete. I also want to mention that if you are enjoying this clipboard, you may enjoy a previous video I did using, again, tons of Tim Holtz products, but I did focus on the Tim Holtz Sizzix Thinlits Retro Oven. And I created like a little shaker oven on the front of the clipboard that I think you might really enjoy. I will list that and link that down below for you so you can take a look at that if you'd like to. I just think these clipboards are so much fun. I love using up a lot of the bits and pieces that I've had for quite some time and just adding just about anything you want. Metal, ribbon, all your ephemera, little pearls. We're going to be adding all of those things today, and it's just so much fun, and it's a great way just to kind of use up, again, some of these little items that we've been stashing away forever. So again, I'm tucking a few more things behind this, and then I'm going to add a little bit more glue to make sure this stays down nice and flat onto the clipboard. And again, I'm using that sentiment, that chipboard sentiment at the bottom, kind of to just rest this little typewriter on. And I tore this was the leftover piece from that public schools piece of ephemera, so I just tore that a little bit, added some more ink to this. Now for the butterfly, I'm going to curl up the wings. First, let's add this other little piece of torn paper and another one of these little labels. So again, just take your time, play around, grab some items that you think would be fun to include. You could even stamp more items. There's lots of choices in your Tim Hotz Stampers Anonymous stamps that you could choose for your background. And then I've got some label tape, and this has a sticky back on it, so I'm going to place this right along the edge of that clip. Just going to cut away any excess. And again, that'll bring in that typewriter feel a little bit more. I've got some gears. These are the Tim Hotz gears, and I'm going to grab 3 of these. I thought I'd put one down here at the bottom left, and then one off to the right, and then one kind of underneath that piece of paper that's coming out of the typewriter. I'll go back to that E6000 glue to glue these in place. And again, this will hold this nicely. So I glued all 3 of those down. I've got the Tim Hotz Idea-ology Adornments. These are the stars. These are the metal stars. I don't think these are sold as a pack anymore, but I did link something below for you that is Tim Hotz, and it has one of these stars on it, so you could certainly use that in place of these. And these are the Halloween droplets, and I'm going to grab kind of the silver tone ones. I'm going to place one of those larger ones on this gear at the bottom left. And then I'm going to place kind of a medium-sized one in that little compass. And then we'll place one smaller one up towards the top of the clipboard. So once all of those are in place, let's go back to that butterfly. I'm going to put this right on the clip, right on the front of the clip. And I'm going to glue that down. Again, I've got that Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. And then I'm going to go back and add a little pearl to the center of the butterfly as well. And I did pick one that had more of a coppery look to it. I've got my label stickers. These are called Sentiments from Idea-ology. And they, again, kind of give you that typewriter feel. So I'm going to grab this one that says Note to Self. And I'm going to just cut this down into 3 sections. And then we'll put that on that little piece of paper that's coming out of the typewriter. And again, these are sticky back, so you don't have to worry about gluing these down. So now that those are in place, let's grab the mica spray from Tim Hotz, and this one is called Antique Bronze. I'm going to just dip that nozzle right into the container and then spatter this. This is going to give a beautiful shimmer. It's really pretty the way this sparkles on your project. And then I went back to that white ink, that white paint, and just dabbed a little bit more onto that label strip with all the letters on it, and a little bit more onto the butterfly. A little bit here and there. Just again, I'm just trying to tie everything together a little bit better. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I painted the back of this black. But I think what I'm going to do is create a little tag, a separate tag, to attach either to that ribbon at the top, where I can stamp another sentiment and sign my name, or maybe add a little pocket in the back and put a tag in there. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I wanted to show you at least the main part of the project. I've got some velvet trims, and these are the warms, and either of these I think would be perfect. Even that lighter one would be nice, that creamy color one. I'm going to grab this kind of mustardy color one. I'm just going to fold that in half, slide it through from the front towards the back, and create a little loop. Just pull that through, and then we can cut away any excess. I'm going back to that star on the typewriter, and I took a little bit of that permanent black ink and patted it on the high spots on that star. So let's take a closer look at the finished project, and this is just so much fun. Again, I created this with a little bit of a graduation theme in mind, but it certainly could be used for anyone. It's inspiring, it's fun to look at. I'm going to get one of those little black metal stands to stand this up on as a gift. I'll include that. So it's kind of a fun way to give a unique gift. So if you enjoyed today's video, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.